going to continue this conversation now on the cost of special missions. We are bringing in Michael Barrett. He's a former director of strategy for the White House Homeland Security Council. He's held posts as well in the offices of the Secretary of Defense and Joint Chiefs of Staff. He currently works as a principal consultant for Diligent Innovations. He is with us now from Houston. Mike, thanks so much for being with us this morning. The Navy SEAL Team 6 that stormed Osama bin Laden's compound in Pakistan are an elite group of soldiers. Special ops such as Navy SEALs don't have an openly reported budget. Why is that?
Well, I think it's just very important that we keep that kind of information, from the adversaries that we're facing. So the money is in there somewhere, as you reported on the lead-in, that it's elsewhere in the budget, but the specific amount of money that we spend on given units, that's the kind of information that we like to keep to ourselves, just because we don't want the other nations to know just how much emphasis we're putting on various pieces. Although, of course, one of the things you see since 9/11 is that there's much, much more discussion of these kinds of things. I remember pre-9/11, the NSA actually putting the letters together used to be considered classified.
So, Mike, I mean, how is the money accounted for? Because even if we don't want our enemies to know, I mean, the U.S. government still has to keep to a budget. So is this put under other categories on the government's balance sheet somewhere?
It is. It gets kind of parsed out into generally into the operations funds, because that's a huge piece and it's kind of hard to track anyway. And you just put it under a certain line item with kind of an innocuous name. And the people in the know can find the money, but we try to keep it so that the general public, but most importantly our adversaries, can't put a real number on specifically what we're doing.
You heard our reporter from D.C., Lizzie O'Leary, giving some figures, but as someone with experience, I mean, how much do you think the special ops budget is for this year?
Well, I think those numbers were pretty close. I mean, there's sort of two types of special operations. There's the open side, Special Operations Command, which is headquartered out of Tampa, and then there's some other pieces and units that are particularly specialized. One would imagine that in an important mission like taking down bin Laden, that those units were used, if of course they exist, which is not officially confirmed.
You mentioned the importance of this mission. I mean, that's clear. So do special operations groups such as this one, in other words, ones who are going to be working on the most important targets for the U.S., do they just simply cost more than maybe other special ops teams that are used in other situations?
They do. I mean, there is no margin for error when you're going into a compound to take down bin Laden. You think about the number of helicopters and the numbers of people who went in, but you could not have that fail. You think about the diplomatic and political and international repercussions of having failed. That is pretty amazing. And so, these are the people where failure is truly not an option.
Can you give us an estimate as to percentage-wise quantify just how much more it costs to send in an elite of the elite versus maybe just a group that is on an important but not as high-profile a mission?
Well, in general, spec ops cost less than 2% of the total DoD budget. So you're not talking about a tremendous amount in terms of percentages, anywhere between 5 and 10%. But really, the money that comes in here has also got to be considered part of the intelligence information that comes in. You've got the satellites, the CIA, everything else. It's a huge funnel, and then the Navy SEALs are right at the end of that funnel.
That's a fair point, Mike. It's not just the team itself, the 79 people that went in. There's a whole infrastructure around them as well. Mike Barrett, thanks very much for the time. Former Director of Strategy for the White House Homeland Security Council. He currently works as a principal consultant for Diligent Innovations.